Hey everybody, this is Nate Smoyer, and you're listening to the Tech Nest Podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the leaders in real estate and technology to find out what they're doing to transform the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate. If you've got an interest in real estate and technology, stick around. You're in the right place. All right, we've got William Devar. He runs a company called Tridster, and I know that not everything out there is very exciting. Title and escrow services may not be the topic you're thinking of. Oh, man, this is going to change the game. But the truth is there's a lot of unknowns, and the options that are on the table, especially in my opinion, are not consumer-centric. It's not about saving the consumer money. It's not about making the process faster and easier. A lot of times it has to do with what the agent thinks is the right choice or who their friends are at another company. So William is on a journey to bring some clarity, transparency to those industries. They're working in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and California, headed to 12 new states over the next 12 months. I think they're really cool what they do. I love William's approach to this. Kick back, relax, enjoy the show. Hey, William, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nate, thanks for having me on.
I like how I caught you. You're trying to take a sip of some water, and I'm just like, hey, get in here. Let's do this.
For sure.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know we've been trying to connect to make this happen for a little while, and I'm excited about this one. I know what you guys are doing. To many people on the outside, may not be the industry they're thinking, oh, that sounds so cool and interesting. But I like it because what you guys are doing is so consumer-centric, and that's what really appeals to me. So before we jump into anything, let's get started off. Please let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is William Devar. I'm the CEO of Tridster, a title insurance marketplace for home buyers and refinance borrowers in the real estate space.
All right. Now, before we get into anything too technical about what that all that means, let's set the benchmark here, because even for people I know that work in and around real estate aren't always very clear on the differences between title and escrow. There's some nuances from state to state. Can you give a baseline here of what is title and escrow services?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just, to go a little kind of further into it. So, prior to starting Tridster, I was part of the founding team at Better Mortgage, which is the fastest growing mortgage lender in the US today. And I spent a lot of time looking at a lot of different consumer loan applications. And we were really fascinated with respect to title insurance and closing services, because we saw all kinds of different providers kind of come through on transactions. And it really struck our interest when we started seeing within given states consumers who use title companies that really, for kind of very similar kinds of transactions, vary significantly in price and costs, and that's what really got myself and my partners thinking about title and how to kind of better educate consumers with respect to title insurance and the role that it plays in the transaction. And, just to give a brief overview as to what title is. So when you buy a piece of real estate, every piece of real estate property has what's called title, which is a set of kind of legal rights associated with the property, right? And when you buy a property, you are assuming some of those rights to the property, right? And you have some rights to the property, other individuals, entities have other rights. Like, for example, the US government has the right of eminent domain over every single piece of real estate property in the US, and that's part of the title to every single property. Similarly, utilities have rights of easement on property, so that to the extent that they need to, go on and make some type of repair to, for example, an electrical line or a water duct, they can do so, and they're within their legal right to do so. And then, other entities, like, for example, state and local governments, have the ability to place tax liens on your property in the event that you don't pay your taxes, right? And so part of getting a title insurance policy as somebody who's buying a home is making sure that the title to the property you're buying doesn't have any kind of lingering or unresolved issues from the prior owner's ownership of that property. And so, some of the most common kind of title issues that pop up are, for example, tax liens for unpaid taxes on the property, mechanics liens, right, for unpaid contract work done on the property, spousal or child support debt liens placed by a spouse for missing payment on obligations for child support. And so the process of getting a title insurance policy is, first off, ensuring that these issues get resolved and cleared up before the closing of the transaction. And then the insurance policy itself makes sure that, if the title company missed detecting any of these issues as part of the closing process, that you as a buyer will be protected against any costs associated with defending your property title in court down the road.
There we go. We went deep into that one right there. No one has any further questions. We're done. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Sorry if I went too deep there.
No, it just shows, like, okay, so, and obviously everyone has some different opinions on, how much is this insurance truly worth, how many issues actually arise. And sure, issues absolutely do. I don't know of anyone who's had any issues, but, in the event that something did, you sure as heck want to be covered, because typically it's not like you're just losing $150, $200. I mean, you could be a costly mistake if you don't have insurance on that title. So let's start with this though. So I want to jump into and talk about Tridster now. I pulled this quote, I think from your website or maybe from the Crunchbase profile. It says, Tridster revolutionizes the way homebuyers and borrowers shop for title and escrow services. So what I want to know is, what solution does Tridster provide that is unique or non-existent anywhere else?
Yeah, sure. So today, if you're a consumer and you want to evaluate different title insurance and settlement service providers, there really isn't a whole lot out there on the internet in the way of resources to help you understand the product and service, understand who provides the product and service, and give you a framework with which to compare different providers and their product service offerings. In essence, there's not really a mature marketplace to help you as a consumer find the best provider for your transaction in your market. And so what Tridster does is, in the states where we're currently active, which today is Virginia, Pennsylvania, and California, provide consumers with general high-level information about title insurance and settlement services, and then also provide them with cost estimates for both the settlement work as well as the title insurance policy in their transaction. Our goal is to provide consumers with all of the information that they need to make the most educated consumption decision about who to work with, right? And so when you look at working with a title company for both insurance as well as the closing side of things, you're looking at a number of factors. First of all, there's an insurance product at play, right? So you want to understand that, how insurance coverage varies from one provider to another. Secondly, you want to understand how financially stable the insurer is, right? Is this insurer going to be around to pay out a claim in the event that I need to make a claim, right?
Right.
You want to know how much this product costs, and so we provide price information. And then ultimately, you also want to understand, okay, is this a competent, reliable, friendly service provider, right? And so there's a level of kind of rating of service quality that you also want to understand. And today, Tridster provides consumers with compare coverage level, price, financial stability ratings for the title insurers. And over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be incorporating both user and industry professional reviews as well for title companies so that consumers can also decide along that dimension of service quality as well.
Very cool. And, I think you alluded a little bit to this earlier, but I mean, why, back to your previous role, when you were looking at all those loan applications, but why is this particular area of the industry important to you?
Sure. So title insurance and settlement services is one of the largest line items of cost on your closing statement when you go to buy a home. And
do you know what the cost range is, or is it totally different case by case or percent like commissions?
Yeah, it varies from state to state, but say for an average size transaction, it's going to be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for both the title insurance policies as well as the closing work, right? And it's listed prominently in that section on the loan estimate services you can shop for, right? And when we were around the time that the TRID disclosures came out, right, that had this new kind of wording and presentation of fees to consumers, we were looking at this and we're like, oh, okay, this looks interesting and useful. But then you look at this and then you go online and you try and actually shop or search for title providers, and you run across very little in the way of consumer-facing resources to help you understand the product and find providers. And in our view, it's because traditionally consumers have found title companies through traditional intermediaries in the transaction, like real estate agents or lenders, right? You would ask your agent, hey, who should I use for closing? And they'd let you know, or your lender would just say, hey, you're refinancing, this is the title company that we use. And TRID, made an effort, a push to help consumers understand that this is actually a consumption decision that they have the authority to make. And we saw that there's just not a lot in the way of resources to help consumers in that decision. And the stakes for consumers in actually exercising control over that decision are non-trivial, right? The difference in cost between kind of median cost providers in a market and really competitively priced providers in a market can be quite significant, right? The average Tridster site visitor has surfaced on average $800 in savings.
That's a big screen TV for your brand new house.
It's a big screen TV for your brand new house. It's it's some residual cash left over to help furnish the living room that was otherwise going to go unfurnished for you. It's any number of things.
Moving truck, boxes, like all that stuff. Yeah, $800. And typically, you have two options. You can pay that up front, which is, more cash out of pocket, or you can roll that expenses into the loan, but then what's the true cost of that?
That's absolutely right. And so, consumers also, I think, they miss out when they don't have access to a marketplace. They miss out on finding out about new entrants to the market who can offer much more competitive pricing. They miss out about finding out about startups like States Title, right, which is taking a really fascinating approach to originating title insurance policies, right? They use a predictive analytics model to figure out, whether or not they think a property will have a lien issue. And if they don't think it has a lien issue, they'll issue a title commitment in seconds, as opposed to 10 days, right? 7 to 10 days, which is the average time for a title commitment from a title company. And so
that's incredible.
If you're a consumer, right, you want to know if especially if you think about consumers in hot real estate markets like Denver, Seattle, LA, San Francisco, right? Where, closing timelines are really tight with sellers. If you can find a title company that's going to just erase 7 to 10 days, right, from the process, that's really valuable information for a consumer to have. And, that's the kind of market intelligence and, market information that we want to surface to consumers in the real estate transaction.
It's so interesting you'd bring that up. I mean, this is a recurring theme I continuously see in reading about real estate tech companies, and also VCs have been talking about this quite a bit, different conferences in the last year, are those who really are like, look, real estate's real simple. Those who solve the friction throughout the transaction are going to win and going to win big, because the opportunity is there. And like you just pointed out, you can shave 7 days off your closing time coming in with an offer. I mean, one of the, the tactics we would use is, instead of putting a 10-day inspection contingency, we'd do a 5-day, which are, that's a work day. So we get the weekend. And then we would get, at day 5, we'd submit the inspection response, which gave us an additional 5 days to make a decision. So we would still get the 10 days. So, this allows you to be far more competitive. And I think that it's so interesting, because this is, thought of, you walk into a title company and you see paper everywhere. You're just so much paper, and you're like, man, what could you possibly do here other than just an online form? But you guys are, obviously taking something to market that's helping people see those options. So,
and it has a waterfall of beneficial effects, right? It not only reduces the seller's exposure, right? In the event that a transaction doesn't work out, but a buyer can, if it's 7 to 10 days, shorter in close time because of how quickly the title work can be done, the buyer can get a lower duration lock on their mortgage, right? Which translates into a lower interest rate at lower cost for them, right? So it's just, the faster that you can do things in a real estate transaction, the more you can benefit buyers and sellers.
Right. Yeah. And I just spoke with a VC yesterday. He wasn't willing to tell me who. It was Nima from Tomvest, and one of their portfolio partners is working on, faster mortgages where you can walk in the door. So, I mean, I envision it the day of, you walk in the door of the house you want. You're like, this is the one. You can apply for the mortgage. You can have the offer written with an approval letter that day. We've had notarized on the show. They'll do, notary anywhere, anytime, any state, online. And then you're talking, if you shave a few days, I mean, you could close a conventional loan 14 days, 20 days.
We can totally be done. And this was and is the project of Better Mortgage, which I have to give a shout out to, is doing fantastic work in creating an amazing customer experience at blisteringly fast close times for consumers.
We should talk to them too. I'd love to. So let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you guys are providing a ton of transparency here, but so I guess I got so many questions. Okay. We'll keep it focused here. I don't want to go down any rabbit holes. First, how are people finding you? I imagine there's some pull through with some agents, but how are you also getting directly to consumers? Because as you mentioned, and also in my personal experience, when people go to write the offer, like, hey, so I use Chicago, if that's cool with you. And usually the buyer says, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. So, I think when you're in a real estate transaction, there are a lot of different people trying to get in front of you as a buyer with a lot of different kind of interests and goals in mind. So there's a lot of noise around real estate. Consumers, as soon as the market generally figures out that you want to buy a home, there's a lot of incoming kind of marketing and messaging at you. And title, is typically, I think, for a lot of consumers, something that they learn about, discover as part of that home buying process, typically from a real estate agent who will, as I mentioned, give guidance kind of as, with respect to who to use. So the consumers that we're finding and that we're attracting to our site really tend to be second, third, fourth, and beyond time home buyers, right? People who kind of understand the home buying process, have been through it before, know that they have the ability to shop for this product and service, and want to make sure that they're finding the best providers at the best prices. So experienced home buyers, and then also people refinancing home loans, who are also by definition experienced home buyers, right?
Yeah,
people
yeah.
know, like, okay, and they tend to they tend to kind of be more active on the tail end of our funnel, just because they don't have the pressure of somebody saying, oh, well, you really should use our title company. They tend to exercise more kind of decision-making authority and making that decision for themselves. And we're attracting those consumers typically through search engines like Google, Bing, Yahoo, where we're able to, really target consumers who are looking for things like title insurance, title company, escrow company, settlement services.
Got it. Yeah, and I do appreciate like what you're saying. It's going to be experienced buyers and sell or refires, because they felt the pain once. And the conversations I would have in transactions and with people is, it's actually, they didn't really. They'll say like, man, I didn't realize how much it was going to be until after they've spent the money. They're like, shoot, that would have been worth another 2 or 3 phone calls to say, this was more than it should have been. I should have made a few more phone calls, like, and it's that hindsight. So
sure.
Of course it's going to be, I had the same thing. I had the same thought. I was like, oh, shoot, I thought the down payment was only going to be this. I didn't plan for the.
We want to get in front of,
So can you say how you're like, so you're going like directly how you're reaching people? Is it SEO? Is it, are you doing paid ads?
Yeah. So it's really through paid search today. Again, I think that there's not really a lot out there in the way of consumer facing content for title insurance, settlement services, escrow services that answer questions people are asking, like, what is title insurance? Who picks the title company in my state? What are title insurance rates for 2019? And so part of our strategy on the consumer acquisition side over the next 12 months is to really spend a lot of time putting together world-class content, which addresses these questions that we see consumers asking online, so that we can get in front of them more organically. But to start, we've really just focused by targeting consumers who know what they're doing, looking for information on this product, and we can very efficiently get in front of on both Google ads and Bing ads.
Not that I want to nerd out too much on marketing, but that is my thing. Have you guys tried Quora?
We've looked at Quora, but I have not, I haven't done the research to see kind of like how many users are engaging with title related questions. And so I think there's a bit of an unknown there for me in terms of like, what does the audience size look like for this specific product or service there, but very interested in learning more and really about any place that real estate consumers are going to research and get educated on this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, Google's the number 1, YouTube is number 2. If you weren't doing anything professional, actually Pinterest is a search engine. It's a surprising turn of events. Pinterest has become a search engine for people, because where do you go when you need ideas? You just go to Pinterest. It's got everything. So anyway, I digress here a little bit. So, leveraging some Google ads, so that's been helping you guys grow. Obviously, you've got some great relationships in the industry. It's not like you guys are new to the industry. But I am curious, and I ask this to every guest, has there been something that you guys had tried, both as maybe as a comparison tool or a growth model that didn't work out, that you kind of had to, okay, we need to pivot or go more in this direction, or go a different direction? Any sort of experiments that maybe just didn't go right that you had to change up or go a different direction?
Sure. So, I think we did a fair amount of social media advertising at the outset, namely on Facebook, and we found it challenging to really get in front of high intent consumer traffic out of those platforms. And so, we got a lot of kind of click through over to our site with some of the advertising we were doing, but we didn't see a lot of those consumers then kind of going all the way through our funnel and actually, learning more about pricing. And so I think, and I don't know what other, kind of consumer facing real estate businesses have seen in the way of performance on social media, but I know for us that, that's been a challenging nut that we haven't cracked yet.
Yeah. No, and it can be challenging for just about any business, especially on the earlier onset. But in real estate, I have this conversation. Sometimes it's really difficult to gauge intent well online, because just because you're looking at homes daily on Zillow doesn't mean you have any interest in buying. It just means that you want to be nosy and see what your neighbor's house is worth or what furniture they have.
That's right.
Let's all be real. We know why Zestimate works. It's playing on our own egos. So we can say that we bought at a better time than our neighbor and got more equity. So
yes, that's right.
So naturally, the question I have to ask is, how do you guys make money?
Sure. So we generate consumer leads that we then sell to title companies on our platform. So it's just a strict lead generation business model at this point, and we're actively thinking about other ways that we can, that we can assist consumers and make additional revenue. But for the time being, we've found that to be a functional business model. So plan to expand that way as well. And, going back to the acquisition side, one place that we're really interested in kind of exploring further is empowering real estate agents who don't necessarily have relationships with title companies to provide more information about options in market to their home buyers. And we've had some really interesting conversations with real estate brokerages around white labeling our title company comparison service for them, which their agents can then use and refer to their home buyers, so that when they come and they say, hey, I've got to work with a title company, who should I work with? They can say, oh, go to our website and hit compare title companies or find a title company in our area. And Tridster powers that entire experience. So I think, our goal is really to help consumers in any way that we can. And we love getting in front of consumers directly when they go online to shop, but we also know that, in practice, they're kind of making decisions or having conversations about this product service elsewhere. And we're definitely trying to think through how we can best reach consumers where they're actually, taking action on this product and service. And so to the extent that we can equip agents, right, who are kind of on the front lines, providing this value to consumers, we're really interested in figuring that out.
Yeah, and if a consumer's hired an agent, obviously the level of trust and influence that exists there is just so much more. So if they say, hey, use this tool, it means a lot more than you coming to the consumer directly and saying, hey, please use our tool.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some authority that comes with that. How many, I don't know how you measure it. Do you measure by users or inquiries? But how many people have gone through and used Tridster to compare title and escrow services?
Yeah, sure. So since we've launched, we've handled or processed just over 7,700 pricing requests, and we've generated over 2,700 registered consumer leads or users on our site. And that's mostly in Pennsylvania, though late last year we expanded to Virginia and California. And so we're looking forward to expanding even further this year. And
Washington.
We are looking forward to being in Washington.
Woo! Let's make it happen. Pennsylvania's my home state, though, so shout out PA.
Washington's an interesting state, though, because a lot of times it seems like the title company is written into the actual sales contract. So
it is. It's typically a lot of agents put it in the agent notes. Please use Chicago Title, or please use.
Sure.
I don't even remember all the other ones. I mean, and that's where I go back to, like, why I think this is so important, because the existing model is not consumer centric. You know, when I became an agent and I got my license, the way I learned about who to use for title was the person next to me. I said, "Hey, who do you use for title?"
Sure.
And they gave me a name and a company. And so when I got on the phone, I was like, "Hey, this is who we use." And it was the same people using the same people all the time.
Sure.
And that's not, just like you said, that's not giving people the options, letting them know what's available. And it should be far more transparent as to, who we're using and what they provide and what they do that makes it worth it.
Sure. And yeah, one of our challenges is, like you mentioned, every state kind of has a different dynamic, and figuring out how to crack the nut in each state is its own challenge. So
no, it can be a little tough, obviously, with different laws and all that. I want to shift gears a little bit here. We just got done talking about, you guys have a lead gen model to your business. But what about the startup of it? I mean, you guys are only 2.5, 3 years old.
Right.
And have you had to raise any money? Have you taken any funds to be able to get where you're at right now?
Yeah, so we, the team really has self-funded up to this point in time, though. Now that we've I think proven out that there's real consumer demand for information about this product and service, right? And there's real demand on the industry side to connect with these consumers, right? Because I think a lot of the industry realizes that consumers are kind of increasingly getting involved in the real estate transaction. And you have to be able to engage directly with them, and they're happy and eager to do so. I think, now that we've proven out that there's kind of a demand on both sides, and we've gotten it to work in a few states, we're now going to look to expand this out nationally, and that's going to take some external capital to do. So
very cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, keep me posted there. We've had a few people on the show. I mentioned to you, we had Nima from TomVest, but I can't wait to hear what you guys do. And then obviously, let your investors know Washington, top priority. We got to bring that to the people up this way. I'm just advocating for my friends and for my future deals. I want to have this available to me, because it's just not a thing you can do. I mean, it's not apples to apples calling everybody and just getting a straight up answer on all this. So
absolutely.
So speaking of funding, so, this is, I think, going to be a big year for real estate tech. There's a ton of rumors about who's going to buy who.
Sure.
In the past really 3 years, funding for real estate tech has ballooned. It's really gone, I wouldn't say haywire, but it's really, I think people have woken up to, hey, maybe we should invest in the world's largest asset class. Time to put some tech behind it, get rid of all that paper and that redundancy and the slowness. But, so those are what I think about the funding to real estate tech. But I'm curious what you think. Why is it that now companies are investing into real estate from a tech perspective? And also, where do you think it's headed?
Sure. So, I mean, I think if you take a look at, how much it costs to trade real estate in the US relative to the rest of the world, there's a real sharp and significant disparity in terms of total transaction costs in the US and pretty much any other country you look at. There's a really interesting graphic floating out around there that breaks it down, but it's several, percentage points of the total value of the property worth of transaction costs. And so I think that is a fairly clear indicator that there's more friction than necessary in trading real estate, right, in the US. And so, it totally makes sense that we're seeing as much investment as we are into real estate technology, which is promising to eliminate a lot of this needless friction, right, from the transaction and make it much cheaper for consumers to buy and sell real estate. And in terms of, I don't study kind of industry trends as in depth as probably many VCs or investors do, but we've obviously seen companies like Knock, Open Door, and Zillow with its recent turn to direct acquisition of homes become a really significant theme and focus of investment capital. And it seems like we're going to continue to see that, barring a major collapse of either of them and what they're trying to do. I think we're seeing really interesting innovation in the title space with companies like States Title, with software companies like Qualia, which are helping make the closing experience for any consumer with title companies who use them much cleaner and faster. Seeing a lot of interesting innovation in homeowners insurance in terms of making it easier to get quotes for policies and get policies that really meet the needs that you have. So I think we'll continue to see investment in technology that makes it easier, faster, cheaper for consumers to buy and sell property.
That's the dream, man. Let's go. I'm pumped. I was just excited thinking about it. Let's make it easier and faster and less expensive. Appreciate that. So before we move on to my favorite segment of the show, I'd love to give you one last shot. If there's anything I haven't served up a softball on for you to share about Tridster, is there any one last thing you think that people should walk away understanding and knowing about Tridster?
No, I think we've covered it. Our goal is to, again, help consumers be better educated and retain more value in the real estate transaction. And, we want to see consumers exercising more authority. And in order to do that, you've got to give consumers convenient, reliable access to fantastic information resources that make it easy for them to identify areas to save in the transaction. And we're going to continue working to do that and meet those goals for consumers.
Very cool. We're going to move on to play a game here. It's called For the Future. It's a little, I think it's funny. It's a pun, like the number 4, but for the future. For the Future is a segment where I get to ask each guest who comes on the show to give their best predictions. So good thing you've been studying up on those trends based on the following 4 questions. William, you ready to play?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Question number 1, this one's easy. What does Tridster look like 1 year from now?
So we'll be in additional 12 states and hopefully helping our consumers save not only on title insurance, but other products and services in the transaction. We hope to layer in homeowners insurance over the next 6-12 months.
Oh, there it is. Question number 2, what will the housing market look like 1 year from now?
There's a question.
It only gets worse from here.
That gets the big shrug, right? I mean, the MBA at the end of last year predicted it would go slightly up, but we're seeing it go slightly down. I mean, I think a lot of it is going to hinge on, what happens with this shutdown, which is clearly slowing economic activity. It's making it harder for mortgage originators to do their job by ordering things like tax transcripts. So I'm going to go ahead and discount the NBA's predictions from end of last year and say we're going to be slightly down from last year.
In terms of sales volume or pricing?
In terms of sales volume, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. That's what we're seeing here. We're only north of Seattle. A report came out recently, 1 in 10 units for rent in Seattle are vacant.
Wow.
And prices have seen their sharpest drop in years. So we've got a little bit of an excess of inventory for rent. Lots of freebies being given out to get people to rent. Prices aren't low enough with interest rates where they're at to spur too much growth. So, all right, let's keep moving. Question number 3, when will the next big boom or bust happen in real estate?
Well, real estate values tend to be somewhat cyclical, and it seems like we've in a lot of markets, not all markets, reached a bit of a high level mark, and so I don't expect we'll see a bust like we saw in 2007, 2008, just because the mortgage industry has exercised a lot more discipline in terms of the kind of credit it's extended, and so we don't we don't have the same kind of credit bubble. But that said, I would have to guess that we're going to start to see high watermark on property values in most markets over the next year or two, and who knows what will happen with the economy. It really is going to depend on where we go economically, I think.
Our current political atmosphere does have things constantly, and man, this could go really good, or who knows. That's a whole nother show, though.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, 4th and final for the future. What's one thing you believe will dramatically change or fade away in real estate as a result of technological advances?
I think that the first mortgage company to do an instant mortgage is going to be really the most dramatic driver of change in terms of how we can trade real estate. Because today we have to think like, we make a lot of decisions around buying and selling homes on the basis of how easily and how quickly home buyers can get financing, right? You think like today you have to sell a home if you want to buy another one in order to get your equity out before you can move into the home that you want to buy, right? And so, I think that, when consumers can kind of get to a place where they just have immediately available credit and property can be traded with financed buyers the same way it can with all cash buyers, we're going to be, we'll see a very, very different type of marketplace for real.
Now, there are a few companies kind of doing that, but it does cost a little bit of money. You've got Fly Homes,
sure,
Ribbon, but they're still very regional. They're still very much working on their models. And I think, one of the challenges for something like that is, how does someone look that up? I mean, what do you go to Google and search? How do I get instant cash for my house to buy my next one? I mean, there's no you go to buy a car, you trade in the car, you get some cash, it helps with the down payment, boom, you're good. But we don't have that system yet for the house.
It raises an excellent question, right? Which is, at Tridster, when we look at kind of, again, information resources about all these products and services you end up needing in the transaction, we think consumers are underserved, not just for title insurance, but across the board for products and services, right? We have established marketplaces for mortgage like LendingTree, Bankrate, Zillow, NerdWallet, and yes, they'll give you a fairly clear kind of direction in terms of price, but when it comes to using a lender to finance the purchase of a home, consumers care about a lot more than just interest rate, right? They care about things like reputability and reliability of the closing process. They care about things like speed to close. And a very interesting study by, I believe it was the New York Fed came out last year that showed that fintech lenders on average close 20% faster than traditional lenders.
Wow.
Or 10 days on a time scale, right? And that gap is just opening up, right?
Yeah.
And that's really meaningful information for consumers. Again, consumers in hot real estate markets, they want to know, okay, I'm looking at 20 lenders, you all have the same rate, but which of you is going to close 10 days faster than the other?
Yeah.
And our marketplaces today aren't really surfacing that kind of information. And so I think we've got some work kind of as marketplaces, right, in the real estate space, all of us, to do a better job of figuring out what is important to consumers, and then going out of our way to get that information and put it in front of consumers so that they can make the best decision.
It's kind of like the adult version of the marshmallow test, almost.
What's the marshmallow test?
Well, I'm totally butchering this here, but the marshmallow test is a simple psychological experiment that was, has been done on kids many times. You put a kid alone in a room, you put a single marshmallow on the plate and say, I'm going to be back in 5-10 minutes. And if I return and you haven't eaten the marshmallow, you get a second one, but you are free to eat the marshmallow if you want. And the pain on their face looking at that marshmallow. I mean, they just want to eat it, right? They want that marshmallow. And so what you're saying is, like, especially if they're surveyed after their purchase, if I go through a close extension, right, and then I go through another one, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not going to close. They're going to mess this up. Like, that pain is so real. It is so tangible at that moment. And it really stands out because this is a big purchase. You could lose your deposit. You could lose all that time. You could lose the house, that big, that thing that you're already $15,000 over budget on, that you have to borrow from grandmom, to get the money for the closing costs because no one told you to shop for your title company. And now you're 20 days late or whatever, you know what it is. So, I mean, that pain is very real.
That's right. You might lose the house. You'll definitely have to pay lock extension fees on your mortgage, right? There are a whole host of headaches. And I think, we need to be giving consumers all of this information up front, and we need to be educating them that they need to care about this information up front. Yeah,
I agree. Well, William, we're going to move to the final 3 questions. These are a little bit more about you. They're totally easy, non-predictions. You can just make up the answers if you want. It's all good by me.
Sure.
Question number 1, what are you reading? What do you like to read?
So I'm currently reading Moby Dick by Herman Melville, and I'm also starting a book by, I can't remember his full name, so I'll just have to forego the second book. I'm reading Moby Dick.
Another fictional book or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Mixing it up then.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Question number 2, who are you learning from?
Oh, all kinds of folks. I just really ramped up my engagement on Twitter over the last couple of years, which some days I curse and other days I really enjoy. And, there are just so many smart folks in the venture world, in the prop tech world. I'm a political junkie, so just lots of interesting commentary on kind of what's happening, in this country politically.
Wait, so we really could do a whole nother show talking about the current.
We can do a whole nother show if you want.
Oh man, this is great.
So, I wouldn't point to anyone in particular, but just kind of the community, the online community, especially on Twitter in venture and prop tech, that's just been really generous with their thought and their passion about innovating.
Yeah, I agree. There's a handful of people that I follow that I think that they go on to Twitter rants, and now that Twitter lets you just post tweet after tweet in one big chunk. Andrew Chen being one of those people. I mean, with his reports, obviously, but when he goes off on off on something, it's like pause what you're doing, go read this, because, you know, this
is what you're doing.
Well, I mean, you could learn in 5 minutes, but it took him how much time and experience to distill. So, and a shout out to Drew, who runs Geek Estate. I don't know if you're a member over at Geek Estate. Geek Estate's a online mastermind for other real estate tech and leaders in the industry.
I'm making note.
There it is. I'll get you an intro.
Cool.
All right, last one. What inspires you, or what helps keep you inspired?
Oh, that's a tough one. I guess it's just life, everything around me, whether it's, you know, cooking something delicious, or growing something in the garden, or discovering a really fantastic consumer acquisition arbitrage.
They are all obviously related.
You know, but it's, you know, inspiration, energy, it just passes through from, you know, one part of your life to the next. And so I try and keep it all inspired all the time.
So cool. William, thank you so much for your time. This has been a fun show. I think Title is far more interesting than I thought it was. Actually, I still feel very much the same way about Title, but you're pretty cool. And you make it easy to talk about. So before we head out, I want to give you the opportunity. If people want to connect directly with you and also want to learn more about Tridster, how do they do that? Where do they go?
Yeah, sure. So you stop by our site, tridster.com. You take a look around. Would love to get your thoughts if you have them. And you can get me your thoughts at william.devar@tridster.com. Or you can just email hello@tridster.com, and that's a direct phone to me too. So
boom. There we go. And we'll put that in the show notes so that people know how to get in touch with you, and go from there. But, well, we'll have to see about doing this political show. I don't know if it's going to ruin my career or not.
Let's do it. You can do it under an alias. I will as well.
We should do that. All right. Well, hey, this has been great. We'll have to catch up another time down the line, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show.
You bet.
Cool.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to the TechNest podcast. Hey, don't forget, you can get on the email list so you never miss an upcoming episode. That's technest.io. That's TECHNEST.io. Get on the email list. Go to the App Store, whether you found us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you found us. Leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends. And if you've got a guest or someone that you'd like to recommend, or if you think that you'd be a great guest on the show, hey, send me an email, nate@realteampanda.com. That's nate@realteampanda.com. See you guys later.